Well, hello, Penang Bible Church. This is Peter, and I will be sharing the message for Sunday, June 27th. And I'd like to welcome you all to our virtual church, and I hope you're doing well on day, whatever it is, of our current lockdown. But I'm glad we can still meet through this medium. Today, I'll be continuing our study in Deuteronomy, and I will have the opportunity to talk about dietary laws, and specifically what the Israelites, what they could and couldn't eat when it came to meat. So before I get into that, let's pray. Lord, I thank you for this church. I thank you for Penang Bible Church. I thank you for your church. I thank you for the technology that we have that allows us to continue to learn about you and to stay connected with this. Thank you for the things that I've learned the last week or so in preparing for this message. And I pray that you would use this information and that you would bless the hearts of each person that's listening today. Okay, so I want to title this message, as I advance to the next screen, I call this, Have You Had Your Lunch? Now, before I moved to Penang, no one ever asked me this question, have you had your lunch? Now, back in America, maybe people would ask, hey, Peter, have you had lunch yet? And if I said no, more times than not, they would say, well, do you want to go and have lunch? Maybe let's go have lunch together. But here in Penang, when people ask, have you had your lunch? Whether I say yes or no, they'll say, oh, that's good, or oh, I hope you can soon. They're never actually asking me to lunch. So I just, anyway, so have you had your lunch? Well, the next question would be, what is for lunch? Now, for us in modern day, well, maybe not today because a lot of restaurants are closed, but what I was going to say is we have a lot of options. Penang is known for lots of good food. You know, we can go to food stalls, we can go, when there's no lockdown, we can go to nice restaurants, and we have many options. But if you were living back in the Bible times, in the Old Testament, and you're an Israelite, your choices for lunch were at times limited. And let's talk more about that. So the dietary law, it was instituted to separate God's people from the rest of the population on earth. In Exodus 19, we learn that, now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel. Israel was meant to be a model nation. They were to be the example to the rest of the world. In Leviticus, it says, you shall therefore distinguish between clean animals and unclean, between unclean birds and clean. And you shall not make yourselves abominable by beast or by bird, or by any kind of living thing that creeps on the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. And you shall be holy to me, for I, the Lord, am holy, and have separated you from the peoples, that you should be mine. You should be mine, belong to the Lord. God's hope was that other nations would follow the example that was set by Israel. Deuteronomy 4:40 says, you shall therefore keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which the Lord your God is giving you for all time. And this is one of our key verses for today. Deuteronomy 14. I'll break this verse down. We'll look at verse 3 through 7 first. You shall not eat any detestable thing. These are the animals which you may eat. So you may eat the ox, the sheep, the goat, the deer, the gazelle, the roe deer, the wild goat, the mountain goat, lots of different types of goats are included, the antelope and the mountain sheep. And you may eat every animal with cloven hooves, having the hooves split into two parts, and that chews the cud among the animals. Nevertheless, of those that chew the cud or have cloven hooves, you shall not eat such as these: the camel, the hare or rabbit, and the rock hyrax. For they chew the cud, but do not have cloven hooves. They are unclean for you. Okay, so we all know a camel, right? This is a typical camel here. I don't know about you, but camel doesn't look very tasty to me. I don't see this camel and think, oh, I would like a camel burger. But nevertheless, now this little guy, oh, isn't he cute? Cute little hare or rabbit, or I guess we might even call him an Easter bunny. Now, I find it interesting that God has put him on the unclean list. And this is the little creature, the little icon that in our day and age actually it takes away some focus from our Lord Jesus Christ on Easter, which should be the time that we only think about him and his resurrection. But many kids think about this cute little bunny. So maybe that's part of the reason he's unclean. I'm not sure. Okay, I wasn't clear on what a rock hyrax was. I've never heard of that. I think Pastor Patrick calls it a rock badger or something like that. So Google showed me what they look like. This is a rock hyrax. Well, look at that cute little guy. And the even cuter little guy on his back. Yeah, very, very cute little animal. But you can't eat him either. Actually, when you look up close to this little rock hyrax, this is what he looks like. Okay, clean or not, I don't want to get near that thing. Okay, let's move on. So then the question is, and I've heard this term, since I was just a little boy, and that is chew the cud. So what is chew the cud? Well, this guy looks like he's chewing the cud, but no, he's chewing the corn. So this is chew the corn. Notice how he only has to chew maybe 3 or 4 times before he takes another bite. And that popcorn actually looks rather delicious. No, actually this is chewing the cud. And we could stay on this slide, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 minutes, and this guy's not going to stop chewing the cud. So what he's doing is he is just grinding up the grass that he's eaten, trying to break it down, break down the fibers in the grass, the cellular wall. And then what he'll do is he'll actually swallow it into one of his stomachs. And then after a while, he'll, let's say he'll bring it back up and then chew it some more to help further digest it. So this is what is meant by chew the cud. Now, it's interesting to me that God has made these animals the clean animals. And he intentionally identified many animals that chew the cud, or in other words, they're grass-fed. We could say these are grass-fed animals. Now, most of the earth that God created, it's made up of grasslands, right? Lots of, maybe not beautiful grass like we may think of a manicured lawn, but there's grass. What's another word for it? And things that we as people, we can't eat this because our digestive system won't process this type of grass. And so here God created everything, created the earth, created the sun. The energy from the sun is captured by this grass. Oh, did he just stop chewing? You have to be kidding me. I hope my internet didn't stop. But anyway, so it's captured. Hold on, let me make sure I'm still recording. I don't know why he stopped. He's supposed to keep chewing the cud. Let me see if I'm still connected here. Okay, there we go. Just the screen froze. Keep chewing your cud, buddy. But the grass, it captures this energy from the sun, but we can't utilize that energy. But one way that God allowed us to use that energy is through these animals, these grazing animals that chew the cud, that will feed on this grass. They're able to convert this grass into very dense, very usable proteins that then we can use for our bodies. And it's a really, for the most part, it's a clean type of protein. And so it's this, these animals, they're almost like maybe an energy battery pack. They convert the energy from the sun that's been put into the grass into these animals that are now clean, and the Israelites were allowed to eat these animals. In the US, there's a big promotion. You know, they talk about grass-fed beef and how it's so much healthier than the typical beef in America that's raised on grains and less expensive feeds. And the grass-fed beef, it is more expensive, but it does have a lot of health benefits that you wouldn't find in just the grain-fed beef. Okay, now I don't know if you noticed, but as we went through the clean and unclean, well, the clean, we didn't cover any of these type of animals. Up here in the upper left, you've got the lion, and then you got a tiger, and the bear. Oh my, okay. Anyway, so carnivores, those are animals that eat other animals. They were not included on the clean list. So God did not allow the Israelites to eat these animals. Now, just as God created the clean animals for food and the byproducts that humans could use, he created the unclean animals, these more predatory animals, for different reasons. These carnivores, they're considered prey animals. And not the type of prey where they're going to pray to God, but the type of prey that they will eat, and they feed on other animals. And that's important because it helps to control the populations of the other animals. So I guess I would think of maybe in the US, you know, I'm from Colorado, which has mountains. And so I might think of maybe the mountain lion or wolves or even coyotes. And what they do is they will keep deer populations in check. What it does is it helps keep the deer population down, and it weeds out the old and the sick members of the herd in a more natural way. So if there's you know, really old deer, then that's the one that's usually captured by these predators, and that's what they eat for food. Or if it's a sick animal. And so if one of these predators, if they eat a sick animal, and then we eat that predator, you see, it's possible that we can actually be exposed to that sickness. So God told the Israelites to specifically stay away from these type of animals, that they were unclean. Okay, this is the slide. I was trying to avoid this one. Oh boy, here we go. Let's just get into it. So before I even read that verse, let's all just take a look at this image on the screen. Look at that. You know, a nice holiday ham, depending on what type of holiday you're celebrating. For most of us, maybe, this would be very appropriate, whether it's Thanksgiving in America or Christmas, or maybe one of the holidays that we celebrate here in Penang. This ham, I mean, to me, I look at it, like, oh, it looks pretty good. Maybe even your mouth begins to water a bit as you look at this image. But let's talk about, let's talk about pork and why God includes it. I mean, I have to cover this, right? So Deuteronomy 14:8, it says, also the swine or pork is unclean for you because it has cloven hooves, yet does not chew the cud. You shall not eat their flesh or touch their dead carcasses. So this is the one animal God says, don't even touch the dead carcass. Now, again, I'm not going to tell anyone in church, anyone here today, that you should not eat pork. And we could say, well, but this was for the Israelites, and they were required by God not to eat pork. Now, in America, I mean, I have some wonderful memories of being a kid. I wake up in the morning, I wake up to the smell of my mom making bacon and eggs. The eggs don't really have that much of a smell, but when you smell the bacon, it's like, oh, it smells so good. And actually that flavoring, that smell is so powerful and can trigger such a response, usually a really positive response in people, that they've actually come out with bacon flavored candy. I mean, I've never tasted this, but I mean, that's a flavor. And if you have too much bacon flavored candy, well, you probably need to clean your teeth with maybe some bacon flavored toothpaste. But again, it's the bacon flavoring. You know, to most palates, it just tastes so good. But the truth of the matter is, this is the pig. I mean, this is how the pig lives. This is how they live. Let me read. I found this commentary. It was a Bible commentary. And well, before I read this, if you're having pork for your lunch today, why don't you go ahead and pause, and then you can have your lunch. And then after you've had your lunch, then you can resume our message today. But if you've already eaten and you're okay, let me read what this guy, this person wrote. He said, the swine, it is a filthy, foul-feeding animal, and it lacks one of the natural provisions for purifying its system. And that is, it cheweth not the cud, which is a way that animals actually can purify their system. And the pig doesn't do that. In hot climates, indulgence in swine's flesh is particularly liable to produce leprosy, scurvy, and various cutaneous eruptions, that's skin conditions. It was therefore strictly avoided by the Israelites. Its prohibition was further necessary to prevent their adopting many of the grossest idolatries practiced by neighboring nations. Yeah, so that's how they live. I almost forgot I left this slide in. Have you guys seen this? This video? So ridiculous. I was going to talk about sheep and pigs and how God actually considers us like sheep. But look at this little guy. He gets pulled out of this mess he's in. He's stuck between a hard place and another hard place. And he gets pulled out just like God does with us to just go right off and jump right back in. Not too bright, but nevertheless. So God compares us to sheep, like Jesus says, you know, he's the shepherd, we're the sheep. But actually, in many ways, we're actually more like pigs. And I mean that just even anatomically. When I used to teach the anatomy class at Dalot, I would go to the pig butcher at the wet market, and different times I would have him provide me with pig hearts because they're so similar to a human heart, or even the intestines or the lungs, because they're so similar to our lungs. They've even used valves from pig hearts to transplant into human beings. And even the cornea transplant in the eye, they've taken pig cornea and transplanted that into human eye. So I don't know, I find it so ironic that the one animal that we're probably closest matched with anatomically is one of the most disgusting animals that God created, as far as, you know, the way it eats, its habits. You know, pigs, they'll eat anything. They'll eat, you know, usually they're fed grain when they're raised. but they'll eat dead animals. They'll eat their own feces. They can see whatever an animal eats, that's what we end up eating. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Oh, okay. So like even Muslims, this image reminds me of like Muslims, they won't even touch. They won't even touch anything related to pork. I remember one time I was going through, I think it was cold storage, and I had a package of ham or something that I was going to use for a ham sandwich. And the checker, she wouldn't touch it. And I didn't understand at first. I thought, why is she not, what's wrong? But then I realized she's not even allowed to touch the packaging that this ham has come in. So okay, full disclosure, didn't bother me. I think I really enjoyed the ham sandwich. But I think we should just keep in mind that God created different animals for different purpose, and I think he gave really good. I don't want to say advice because it was a law to the Israelites, but I think it's something for us to consider, that we should really consider how much pork we actually consume. Now, I want to be careful because I know that there's some enterprising individuals in our church that make a really good pork product that we'll probably still continue to buy from them. But we just want to make sure that we understand, just full disclosure. Okay. Oh, just a couple interesting things. Remember when Jesus, he sent the demons into the herd of pigs, and then they ran off the cliff and they died. And Jesus didn't lose a thought in that. He could care less, I mean, they're pigs. And something too, as I was looking into this, the prodigal son, that's the story of this son that had everything that his father had to give him, which is a good analogy for us. And then he went off and squandered his life savings. And to make the story so bad, he actually was in a faraway land, because that's where pigs were. They weren't anywhere near where this father was, but he went to a faraway land and tended these pigs. And actually his life got so bad that he even wanted to eat the food that the pigs ate. So that's when things are bad. Okay, move on. So Deuteronomy 14:9-10 says, "These you may eat of all that are in the waters. You may eat all that have fins and scales, and whatever does not have fins and scales, you shall not eat. It is unclean for you." So what would that verse be talking about? Well, again, I see this image and I'm like, wow, that looks delicious. You have, down here at the bottom, you have a really nice big lobster. You have some crab here, these prawn or shrimp. I mean, this plate of food is probably, I don't know, several hundred ringgit if you were to purchase this in Penang. But these foods, God told the Israelites they were unclean. Now, why would he say that? Well, let me tell you a little bit about these foods. So the shellfish, such as crab and lobster, they do not have the fins or scales, so they're prohibited. However, the shellfish and the shellfish industry, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry today. And in most parts of the world, if you eat this food, it's considered a delicacy. So what's the purpose? Well, lobsters, they're nocturnal, meaning they are active at night, bottom walkers and scavengers that scavenge for dead animals and debris on the ocean floor. Consider them like the vultures of the oceans. Lobsters have even been seen burying dead fish and digging them up a little at a time to eat. Crabs will eat just about anything, and they're known as the professional garbage hunters. Crabs, common shrimp or prawns, and lobsters all feed off dead and decaying matter. Therein lies their job. That's their occupation. They were created to be the cleanup crew for the bottoms of lakes, rivers, and oceans. They were not intended to be eaten by people. Eating raw or undercooked crabs, shrimp, or snails can put anyone at risk of a severe parasite infection. And there's some people that even eating shellfish will cause a pretty serious allergic reaction, just because their immune system can recognize that there's just too much sensitivity. Closer observation of oysters, mussels, scallops, and clams shows that God has a very significant purpose for these creatures also. Now, they're found in streams, coastal areas, and lakes, and are considered filter feeders. They're stationary, meaning they don't go hunting, but rather pump large amounts of water over their gills, trapping small pieces of silt, bacteria, viruses, and plant debris for their dinner. So now you have to ask yourself, once you really understand the role that these creatures play in their natural habitat, do you still want to eat them? And well, maybe sometimes, if you really, really enjoy the taste, maybe sometimes. But we have to consider, what do they eat? What are the reasons why God put them on the unclean list? Okay, birds. So if we go on, our verse in Deuteronomy continues, all clean birds you may eat, but these you shall not eat. The eagle, the vulture, the buzzard, the red kite, the falcon, and the kite after their kinds. Every raven after its kind, the ostrich, the short-eared owl, the seagull, and the hawk after their kinds. The little owl, the screech owl, the white owl, the jackdaw, the carrion vulture, the fisher owl, the stork, the heron after its kind, and the hoopoe and the bat. So here's an image of a vulture. And as I was reading for this, I learned that the vulture, their immune system, it can actually tolerate, they can be exposed to or consume 59 times the lethal amount of botulism or botulin that a human can consume. So they can have 59 times the amount that would kill a human can be consumed by a vulture. And so, God made them for a purpose. They help to clean things up. There's a dead animal. We better hope that, vultures and the like come and clean that up. Now, if you're curious, as I was, what is a hoopoe? Well, this little guy, that's a hoopoe. And I thought, why in the world would he be unclean? So I did a little research, and I found that little baby hoopos in the nest, at a very young age, they learn how to, again, if you're having your lunch, maybe pause our message, but they learn how to squirt their feces at any type of potential predator to try to scare it off. And the mother hoopoe, she produces a very foul smelling oil that she will then put on her young so that they don't taste well. They don't taste good to a predator. So maybe that's the reason they're on the unclean list. Okay, moving on, Deuteronomy 14, 19 through 21. Also, every creeping thing that flies is unclean for you. They shall not be eaten. You may eat all clean birds. You shall not eat anything that dies of itself. You may give it to the alien who is within your gates, that he may eat it, or you may sell it to a foreigner. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. And then this last sentence, which, you shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. Well, that actually, boiling a young goat in its mother's milk, that was one of the pagan practices back in the Israelites' time. And that was considered good luck. So again, God said that that's not right. If we look back to Leviticus, it tells us that also reptiles are unclean. Only insects from the locust and grasshopper family are permissible and have been used as a food source in the Middle East for thousands of years. If you recall John the Baptist, what was his food? Yeah, he survived on locusts and honey. So there would be a nice breakfast there for John the Baptist. Look at this little guy crawling up the arm. Oh, okay. So, hey, what do you think of this? I saw this image, or this GIF or GIF, however you say it. And what I thought was, this must be how John the Baptist would feel at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Running through the field, food everywhere. Lord, forgive me. That would not be the best joke. Okay, so in Acts, Peter had a very vivid vision. So let's read this. The next day, as they went on their journey and drew near the city, Peter went up on the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. Then he became very hungry and wanted to eat. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance and saw heaven opened and an object like a great sheet bound at the 4 corners, descending to him and let down to the earth. In it were all kinds of 4-footed animals of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, and birds of the air. And a voice came to him, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." But Peter said, "Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything common or unclean." And a voice spoke to him again at the second time. A second time, and it said, "What God has cleansed, you must not call common." This was done 3 times, and the object was taken up into heaven again. So the sheet came down and included both the clean animals and the unclean animals. Now, this particular verse, it wasn't confusing, but I just wasn't clear on this. And as I tried to learn more about it, something that we have to consider is that this was happening at the time that Cornelius, he was a Roman centurion, very well respected in the community back then. And he was the first Gentile to believe in Jesus, to convert, to be baptized. He was the first one. And at that time, Peter was still hung up on the truth that before Christ, that the Jews were separate from Gentiles, and the clean and unclean. But during this vision, this is where God was telling Peter that it's okay. Now, because of Christ, because of his sacrifice, because of what he's done, there is no clean or unclean with the people. So that's what I took. That's how I understand this passage. Okay, so now that we've covered this and what the Israelites were commanded as far as clean meat, unclean meat, I like the way that Pastor Patrick, he always does a really great job explaining the difference between the different covenants, and how, depending on when you lived, different laws apply to you at different times. And what I mean by that is through the dispensational view, if I'm saying that correctly, because of grace, we no longer, I can eat a ham sandwich and I'm not sinning against God. You can enjoy your chasu bao, is that the pork? And not, you're not offending God. But I do think that God, he did have these requirements of clean and unclean, not only to separate Israel from other nations, but also just to help people stay healthy. What do I mean by that? I mean, it was a commandment back in the day, but it wasn't just don't eat this because I said so, or you can eat this because I said so. There was really good explanation behind that. And so I think that even today, now we have freedom. We're free in Christ. You can eat a pork sandwich every day, ham sandwich, you can have bacon for breakfast. Your cholesterol will probably go up, but it's not too bad for you. So what I propose is that maybe we think, rather of foods being clean or unclean, maybe let's us today try to distinguish foods in 2 categories that I like to consider food by God or food by man. And so what I mean by that is, if a food by God, that's foods that God intends for us, even today, for us to eat. Like a nice organic apple that's grown on a farm with no pesticides, that type of thing. That's a food by God. That's a healthy food for our body. However, maybe my daughters like to eat these Roundup, is it Roundup chips or something? I shouldn't even admit that. But this bag of chips that you can leave in the cupboard for, months or maybe a year or two have lots of preservatives, lots of artificial flavorings. They like to eat those. We allow them to eat them once in a while, but that would be a food by man, right? Because it's food that was created by man, or food that wasn't necessarily intended to nourish our bodies. So I think if we can look at foods as either food by God or food by man and try to eat more food by God. Here's a couple of distinctions. So I would consider these foods, I know looking at this image, this screen, they all look pretty tasty to me. Even McDonald's French fries, oh my goodness, what do they put in those? They're delicious. I usually don't feel too good after I eat them. Chicken McNuggets, the joke is, what part of the chicken is a McNugget from? I don't know. But these are all food by man. These should be limited in the amount that we consume. In my opinion, if we were to look at what God today would consider clean, unclean, foods we should eat, foods we shouldn't. And then this would be food by God, more naturally grown food, by eating these foods, you're going to be healthier. Okay, that brings me to, well, not to McDonald's, but I found this pretty interesting too. This is McDonald's in the international airport in Israel, and they have kosher food. So they're saying it's okay food for Jews to eat, but yet it's still food by man. I just thought that was pretty ironic. But what I was going to say is it brings me to something that I didn't know if I wanted to talk about or not. I'd like to share something very personal with all of you, if you'd allow me. I guess if you would not allow me, you can just stop the recording now and just go back to have you had your lunch. But I recently put myself through a 100-day challenge. And the reason I did this is, well, one, I'm just getting so fed up of being locked down, no lockdown, just not feeling like I have any control over anything, well, not much of anything in my life. So I came across this challenge, and what it is it has 5 components, 5 parts to it. The first one is that you follow a strict diet of your choice every day. Now, strict meaning whatever you decide the diet's going to be, you can't cheat on it. So if you say, well, I'm going to do a diet and it's going to be whatever it is, I'm only going to have, one piece of ham a day. Well, then you can't have 2. It's something you decide. For me, I decided I was going to eliminate all sugar and greatly reduce the amount of carbohydrates that I was eating, like the rice, noodles, pretty much. Well, okay, I have avoided that completely, 100%. The second component of this 100-day challenge was to exercise every day. And the exercise, so this is every day without missing a day. The third is to drink 1 gallon of water every single day. I think that's about 4 liters, just under 4 liters of water every single day. The fourth was read 10 pages of nonfiction every day. And finally, the 5th part to this 100-day challenge, which I thought was the most ridiculous, is that you're required to take a selfie, to take a picture of yourself every day. Okay, so this 100-day challenge, it looks first off as a pretty demanding physical challenge, but really what it's designed for, and the reason I went through it, is for to build mental toughness. So in the challenge, let's say you're halfway through and you think, or as I thought, I do not feel like exercising today. I'm not going to do it. Well, if you skip any one of these 5 parts to this challenge, then the next day you have to start over at day 1. And I know what you're thinking. What? That's not fair. So if you don't take a selfie one day, you have to start the next day at day 1. Yeah, that's how this challenge works. but it's on the honor system. So it's up to you whether you're going to hold yourself accountable. So this was a real challenge for me because, um, well, like one day, well, I can remember a few times, maybe we got home late from dinner. I did my exercise. I'm getting ready to go to bed, and I forgot I didn't read 10 pages of nonfiction every day. And by the way, the Bible is a really good source of nonfiction to read every day. So I'd have to get up out of bed and go and read the 10 pages because I didn't want to hold myself accountable to start over at day one the next day. The same with taking the selfie. I got sick and tired of taking a selfie every 100 days. But you know what? I made it through this challenge. And I want to show you guys before and after picture. Now, I feel so ridiculous showing this. I've not put this on Facebook. I haven't put it on Instagram. I did send it to my mom and my two sisters just to let them know, because they're always asking, how you doing? How's it going? And so I sent it to them. But beyond that, okay, I'm embarrassed, but I'm going to show you. So here's my before picture. Now in this picture, look at me. I'm like half naked here. In this picture, I feel pretty good. I try to exercise, try to eat pretty well, but 54, almost 55. And, I feel aches and pains. Some nights I sleep well, some nights I don't. Have pretty good energy, maybe better than some people, but still, just, and so here's the after. Now, this after picture, when I got to this point, first of all, I would have never even known that this happened if I didn't take this selfie every single day that's required in this challenge. And when I took it and compared it to the day one, I was surprised. And what I was surprised by is, okay, I'm smiling more, but I think that's truly how I felt and still feel, even though I've loosened up a bit since my day 100, which was about a month ago. But at this point, I had so much more energy, could sleep so much better. And it seemed like my mind was just much more calm. So I felt physically stronger, actually. And I now feel stronger than I ever have, even in my 20s. And I didn't know that would be possible for someone approaching 55. So anyway, forgive me, vanity, I think this is kind of ridiculous, but I could see that it does make a change. So what I would encourage everyone in the church to do is to maybe challenge yourself and maybe start with drinking 1 gallon of water every single day for the next, maybe say 30 days. Just commit to that. Now, I've got to tell you, if you're going to commit to that, to drink 1 gallon of water, you have to start early. Anytime you think of it, you have to drink water. I think that alone will help give you more energy, will help you to feel much, much better. And then after you do that for 30 days, maybe you'd like to incorporate some other components to a further challenge. Anyway, okay, so that's pretty much what I have for today. So let me pray for us. Lord, I thank you again for this time. I thank you for the ability to record a message like this. I pray that you forgive me for any vanity. I don't mean it to be that way. I still, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful to you and how you can change our bodies. Lord, you're the one that does it. I know that if we follow some basic principles, deny some of our urges, cravings, pleasures, even for a season, that our bodies can change, and even those cravings can change. So I pray for each person listening to this message, this recording. Pray that you bless each one, and just thank you for this opportunity. In Jesus' name, amen.